I think I'm going to kind of follow a theme of what's been said already. Hopefully, bring it together. So I work for the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, lead on employment, policy, strategy, and delivery. In effect, my role is about how can we get more people in Greater Manchester in work, how can we get more people who are working in Greater Manchester to be getting more money in work, and how can we ensure people can stay in work for longer and have better and fulfilling lives. And to be honest, that's at the very heart of the Greater Manchester strategy. In effect, we want a place where people can live, work, play, and have the best start in life through their early years, as underfunded as that may be, have the best start in life in terms of school, then move into work, hopefully continue to be skilled up in work, and then decide to retire and have a happy retirement in Greater Manchester. Around all of that, to ensure there's a great infrastructure in place to support it. The reality is there's a long way to go to get us there, but what is absolutely front and centre of that strategy is education, skills and employment. And I think that flows through every one of the 10 priorities in the Greater Manchester strategy. That actually they're kind of fundamental underpinning priorities to make the whole Greater Manchester conurbation tick. And certainly, if it's going to tick to become a real global competitor for places like Shanghai or Munich or other places, because there's a significant way to go. Now, as I'm sure you're all acutely aware, Greater Manchester itself doesn't exist as an island, and there's a whole host of things going on, some within our control, some outside of our control, that we absolutely need to maximise to really make Greater Manchester deliver. And it's up to us to ensure that all these things that are happening at a national level don't all happen in isolation, and that we try to make sense of them collectively at a local level. So the industrial strategy, looking at technical education, inclusive growth, universal credit. What the good thing about the way we're approaching work in Greater Manchester is actually we're looking at those things collectively, not each on their own, and whilst also trying to look at what are those things that are outside of our control at the minute, such as Brexit and what will happen there. And the start that Andy mentioned about more high skilled Europeans in the UK than there are UK is just absolutely staggering. And what we do know is there are 4 kind of key pillars that we certainly need to get in place if we're going to make the strategy not just exist on a piece of paper, but actually translate into improved lives for local people. And individuals are at the absolute heart of this, so the residents of Greater Manchester. And at the minute, it is really hard for individuals to see where they could get to, or where they could see their children going to in the future, and how that system will work for them, because it is such a disjointed and fragmented system. And that's something we absolutely need to get right. Working with partners and funders is important in that area, because one thing that is acutely clear to us is that despite the best will of people on the ground to make things coordinated and to make best use of the resources available to reduce duplication, actually the way that funding streams are kind of pulled together, the way the eligibility criteria is set around those streams forces people to work in a disjointed way or duplicate. So that's something we just fundamentally have to get right. And for me, one of the key things about devolution, and one of the key points we've been pushing on devolution, is please give us some of those individual pots of money and let us try and bring them together in a coordinated way. And to an extent, we're doing that. So for the first time, we're starting to see joint investment in Greater Manchester programmes from NHS budgets, skills budgets, employment budgets, all being pooled together around a single programme or a piece of work. You don't see national government doing that at any great scale. So that's where we can really make a difference. But it is important for us that we maintain that dialogue and that working with central government, because the reality is we've got a very centralised approach to education, skills and work. Very much still Whitehall focused, and the reality is if we're going to make the system work for Greater Manchester, We need to have central government on board, and sometimes that means compromising in areas where we don't want to. So there are things around the work and health programme which I was responsible for commissioning that I probably wouldn't have had there, some of the eligibility criteria, but in order to make sure that government's on board and to get us to a place for the future, there are some compromises we need to make. But the key thing is we're starting to get that evidence base here and that trusting government and government trusting in us that we can actually do something. And if anybody's seen the sort of joint statements around the local industrial strategy, and also actually announcements in this week's in Monday's budget with some specific things, so £20 million with the skills fund for Greater Manchester. That's there because government trusts us, and by us, not the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, I mean us, to do things differently and better in Greater Manchester. And we just need to get that from kind of baby steps to where we are now, relatively small to get to something which is actually system-wide change and improvements in Greater Manchester. I'm not going to touch on that. And as I said about baby steps, and devolution, people can be cynical about devolution, and if you ask a member of the public, what's devolution ever done for you? I'm not quite sure I'm not sure I want to know what response I get. But the reality is, there's some real tangible differences now starting to shoot in Greater Manchester because of some of the powers we've got. So Bridge was mentioned earlier, and around the approach of working with schools and a coordinated offer around business. Look, that's something that other areas don't have. We're starting to see not just small-scale projects with one kind of nice things that one or two people would benefit from that government doesn't pay any interest to. Now, significant numbers of people going through Greater Manchester programmes that are delivering some fantastic outcomes, and that not only gets Department for Work and Pensions, Department for Education and others interested, it gets Treasury interested as well because we're starting to see some improvement. So for me, looking at that entirety of education, skills and employment is actually the heart of what we're doing. So definitely moving away from ourselves and looking at where those commonalities are to do things differently. Now, a point that's been made in all the presentations so far is, okay, we've got some really good statistics. Greater Manchester, the employment rate's going up, fantastic. We've got more people in work than ever. We've got fewer people claiming benefits than ever. The reality, we've probably got more people in self-employment than ever. I don't necessarily think that means we've suddenly got a whole host of new entrepreneurs, new Alan Sugars in Greater Manchester, half of them driving up and down this road on mopeds delivering things. So there's a point about just getting people into work isn't enough, and just skilling people isn't enough. What can we do to ensure that if you're going to be an employer in Greater Manchester, if you're going to be working here, that the quality of work that's available, the opportunities for your staff, are ones that we can all be proud of and all can sign up to it. Now, I've got a plea to people in the room, because many of you, if you work for organisations, have got links to employers. There's a consultation open at the moment around developing a good employment charter for Greater Manchester. And there are charters elsewhere, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're less good. But one of the things that we're seeing, and partly because of having a mayor in Greater Manchester, some of the softer powers is actually we can get large employers round the table, use some of those kind of soft powers to actually start having harder conversations about actually what are you doing for Greater Manchester? If you're thinking about building a new warehouse here, what's in it for us other than a handful of jobs? But that charter will only be any good if it's got really good consultation in it, people have input to it in terms of actually what do we mean by good employment. So paying people the real living wage, at least the real living wage, invested in workforce development, having fair, open, transparent recruitment practices, having invested in workforce development. Those things will only be in there if people respond to that consultation and get their views across. And there's so much wealth of experience in this room. It's a plea to you. Please find 5-10 minutes to fill in this yourself, but also get other people to fill in, because I want this to be something which we can all say, that's what good employment means for us. I believe in that, but it'll only be there if people have input into it. So please follow that link. And are these slides on this? Can you circulate these? That'd be great. So please do that. And perhaps I'll ask Scott and Greg to keep a tab on how many people have actually filled it in. Now I'm gonna leave you just with a few points, and I think perhaps Ian and I have got the same clip art fetish on PowerPoint. But you know, we can talk a lot about challenges, and one thing I'll say about Greater Manchester, one thing that we've been less of, I think we focus too much of our time and energy on what's great, what's not good in Greater Manchester. Our schools are crap, our early years system is crap, we've not got enough people in this, not enough people in that. And actually, we've got a lot to be proud of, and there's a lot that we can do to change things. And for me, there's just something about, can I just be positive for once? These are the things we can do. These are the opportunities where we can make a difference. So I'm keen to ensure that a Greater Manchester strategy and a skills and work strategy behind that isn't just about, let's just do some more number crunching on how crap everything is. Because I could spend all day doing that, I promise you. But actually, how can we answer some of those challenges that are in front of us? So, you know, how can we ensure GM maximises the benefits of an ageing workforce? You know, all that expertise that's currently in the workforce, all those people who don't want to leave the labour market, actually what can we do collectively to keep them in it, and not just keep them doing the same job, but doing those new digital jobs of the future. So thinking differently about things like that. How do we really get skills and employment funding working together? And how can we create things like quality pathways into work for our most disadvantaged residents, so that a Greater Manchester figure of our employment rate is fantastic? How do we ensure that employment rate is fantastic in every area of Greater Manchester, not just in parts of Trafford or South Manchester? And that's where we can say we're really making a difference. So these opportunities here and these questions, I really want the IEP network, our Earth network, Lynn Friday network, and others to think, actually, these aren't just challenges for people sat at Churchgate House or in offices in central government elsewhere to answer. I'm really keen to ensure that your voices are helping to shape this, because the reality is you'll have many of the answers, you'll have the expertise, you'll be able to help shape this. So my plea is, I suppose, is how we can to use networks like this to start thinking about the things that we can do differently and better, as opposed to navel gazing about the things which aren't quite so good. So there's a change in our psyche, and I'm really keen to get your thoughts. So I'm going to leave it on that, which is a plea really. Well, two pleas. One, fill in the consultation on the employment charter and get that across your networks. And secondly, think about the things that you would like to see make a difference, and how you can play a role, and how we can use networks like this to feed that in. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much.